You know how everyone loves to joke about generations? Boomers ruined everything. Millennials waste money on coffee. Gen Z can't put their phone down for 5 minutes. But right in the middle of all this noise, there's a generation nobody really talks about. Generation X, people born between 1965 and 1980. These are the people at your workplace who quietly fix everything without making noise about it. The parents who were always there for their kids but never once asked to be praised. The people who literally built the internet were all addicted to, yet you'll barely find them posting anything online. And honestly, nobody talks about how fascinating these people really are. Their mindset, their habits, the way they think, it's one of the most interesting stories of any generation alive. And today we're going to talk about it. Coming home to an empty house. If you want to understand a Gen X person, start here. Picture a kid, 8 years old, school just ended. They walk to their front door, pull out a key tied around their neck on a string, unlock the door, and walk into a completely empty house. No mom, no dad, no babysitter, just silence. They pour some cereal, turn on the TV, and wait for someone to come home. This wasn't unusual. This was normal life for millions of kids in the 70s and 80s. By the mid-1980s, around 7 million children between ages 5 and 13 were regularly alone at home after school every single day. And what does that teach a child? One very simple but very powerful lesson. Nobody is automatically coming to save you. If something goes wrong, you deal with it yourself. These kids grew up faster than any kid should have to. They learned that actions have real consequences. If you break something, it stays broken. No one is coming to fix it for you. This is why Gen X people have this almost calm, quiet ability to handle problems while everyone else is still panicking. They're not superhuman. They just practice handling things alone since childhood, watching adults break their own rules. But the empty house was only one part of the story. Gen X kids also grew up watching the adults around them say one thing and do something completely different. Elders talked about loyalty, about commitment, about working hard and being rewarded for it. Then these same kids watched their parents get divorced. They watched their fathers lose jobs after giving 30 years to the same company. They watched adults make big promises and quietly disappear when things got hard. The lesson wasn't taught, it was observed. The people and systems that promise to be there for you often won't be. So Gen X stopped fully trusting those promises. They started hoping for the best but always preparing for the worst. They kept a backup plan. They expected things to go wrong because in their experience, things usually did. This is why they can seem a little closed off sometimes, a little distant, like they're holding something back. They are. They learned early that giving people full access to your heart is risky. Not everyone deserves it. Not everyone stays. Why they don't post their life online. Gen X barely exists on social media, and people assume it's because they don't understand technology. That's completely wrong. These are the people who built the technology. They understand it better than most. The real reason is much simpler. They grew up when privacy was completely normal. If you did something embarrassing as a teenager, maybe your close friends found out, laughed for a week, and then it was forgotten, gone. No video saved forever. No strangers commenting on it years later. So when social media arrived and everyone started sharing every detail of their life online, Gen X didn't think it looked exciting. It looked dangerous. They knew from experience that the less people know about your personal life, the safer you are. Sharing everything feels like leaving your front door wide open and hoping nobody walks in, so they watch, they read, they stay informed, but they keep their private life private, not because they're shy, because they remember what it felt like to actually own their own story. Laughing so they don't cry. Ever notice how Gen X people have this dry, almost sarcastic sense of humor? Everything's a joke. Nothing seems to shock them. This came from growing up during the Cold War. As children, they sat in classrooms while teachers calmly explained nuclear attack drills. They were told that hiding under a wooden school desk would protect them from a nuclear bomb. A wooden desk against a nuclear bomb, and adults acted like this was completely reasonable advice. When you grow up in that kind of world where the threat is real but the response is almost laughable, you develop a very specific way of coping. You learn to laugh at things that should terrify you. You keep emotional distance because if you let every scary or unfair thing fully land, it would break you. The humor isn't coldness, it's armor, a survival tool they built as children and never stopped using. They work hard but never brag about it. Gen X will never post about their work ethic. You won't catch them writing long captions about waking up at 5 a.m. or grinding harder than everyone else. They just quietly get the job done. This started with real early jobs. Paper routes before sunrise, packing groceries for hours, working registers and doing math in their head when the machine broke down. Real responsibilities with real pressure attached. They also watched their parents pour everything into companies that eventually let them go without a second thought. So Gen X made a simple decision. Never blindly trust any employer, but always make sure you're good at what you do, because being genuinely skilled and reliable is the only real job security that exists. They don't work hard to impress anyone. They work hard because it's the one thing they can fully control. Tough alone, but loyal to the core. Here's the most interesting thing about Gen X. They will almost never ask for help. They would rather struggle quietly than admit they need someone. But if you need help, they show up. No questions, no drama. They just appear and start doing whatever needs to be done. When your parents weren't around, your friends became your family, not by choice, but by necessity. And that kind of friendship, built out of survival rather than convenience, creates a loyalty that lasts a lifetime. They don't make a big deal out of helping people. They don't post about what good friends they are. They just do it and move on. The generation nobody thanked. Generation X grew up between two completely different worlds. Old enough to remember life before mobile phones, young enough to learn it all, build it all, and adapt to everything new without once stopping to complain. They are literally the bridge between the old world and the new one. And here's the thing about bridges: nobody stops to appreciate a bridge. Nobody throws a celebration for it. Nobody thanks it for holding everything together through the rain, the storm, and the heat. The bridge just does its job every single day, without recognition, without applause. And if you ask a Gen X person how they feel about that, they'll probably just shrug, because needing applause was never really their thing. Getting it done was always enough. If this helped you understand someone in your life a little better, whether it's a parent, a coworker, or maybe even yourself, share it with someone who needs to hear it.